Very good. Okay, so I sort of preface this, but in order to be um, fully transparent, I want to make sure that I lay out the predicate properly. So I've been talking with a friend of mine. Both you guys are familiar with who I'm talking about because we've talked about him before. And one of the things that he expressed a concern about was what he sees as a leftward shift of the Democratic Party, right? And um, his argument is that the Democratic Party is essentially embracing the idea of socialism. Now, he and I disagree on the definition of socialism, but essentially what he's suggesting is what a large segment of the Democratic Party wants to do is essentially get rid of capitalism and replace it with socialism. So eliminate capitalism and replace it with socialism. Now, you guys might have different definitions of socialism. I don't want to influence you by giving my definition, although you've already heard my definition in the class, whether you remember it or not. This is my question to you. Is that because you guys are both way more progressive than I am, right? That's pretty clear. Um, when you're to, do each of you consider yourself to be democratic socialists?
No.
No.
Leela, would you call yourself a democratic socialist?
Um, I usually say like the umbrella term leftist, but yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like Nithya Raman, who's a member, and other ones. Yeah, I would tend to vote for them. So I guess for the sake of this, yeah, I usually just kind of use the umbrella term leftist
Okay.
socialist sometimes. So yeah, yeah,
And my friend will use that. He'll say people on the left. So then
yeah,
my
yeah.
question is, when people are on the left, or people who, so Jack, if you wouldn't describe yourself as a democratic socialist,
No.
um, from your, so Bernie Sanders calls himself a democratic socialist, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, AOC calls herself a democratic socialist.
I know where you're going. Yep.
So no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm asking questions now. I'm
Yeah.
simply asking, when they talk about being democratic socialists, are they talking about getting rid of capitalism in the United States?
No,
No.
that's the problem that I have with that. But like I said, for the sake, that's personally my problem with it. I think we should go a little bit more that way. But Jack, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're all good. You're all good. I don't think they are talking about getting rid of capitalism. I think they are certainly angry at capitalism because I think the modern state of capitalism is failing working people. You know, we go from 1955, where the CEO pay to worker pay ratio is 20 to 1. We jump to 1995, where the CEO pay to worker pay is 75 to 1. As of today, it's over 200 to 1. You know, I am all for somebody being a billionaire. I really don't care that much. But if you have workers who are struggling to make ends meet and can't put their kids through college, you know, that in itself, and you are becoming richer, that in itself is a failure of the system. And while we should promote capitalism, a key element of capitalism is competition. And right now, I don't see enough competition out there right now. So, un- at this point, I think there is a call on government to step in to make sure that we create competition. That's why people like Lena Khan. They like the fact that she was breaking up these large scale corporations who were buying up other smaller corporations. You know, a, you can't have a healthy capitalist economic system if there's only one or two people who are owning everything. And
And and from your understanding of it, do you think that the views you just expressed are in line with like what Bernie Sanders thinks, what AOC thinks? That is your sense from your listening to them that they want to eradicate capitalism or if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is they want, when they talk about being democratic socialists, they want to regulate capitalism. Like you were actually speaking about capitalism in favorable terms, Jack. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
Yeah,
Has capitalism been overall good for the development of America?
I would say yes. I would say capitalism has been good for America. We've lasted 250 years as a capitalist economic system with a democracy for a political system. And that, from my perspective, yes, I like capitalism. But that does not mean that I am constantly in favor of just sitting back and letting the private sector run itself. At times, I think the government needs to step in and check it. Now, do I see? This is my thing, right? I think sometimes when people hear socialism, they think the sieging and taking of private property. And that is where I disagree with people who talk about Bernie Sanders and AOC. If there is evidence out there, show it to me. I have yet to hear Bernie Sanders and AOC and Zohran Mamdani talk about the the taking of private property. I don't think they have mentioned that once. If there's video, please show it to me. And I will admit I am wrong, and I will go from there. But I think they are talking about the government stepping in at times and course correcting our capitalist economic system.
And then Leela, when I first asked about has capitalism been more or less a good thing, I saw you shake your head like
You
no.
know, I mean, see, I'm also coming from, like you had said, we've lasted 200 years. I'm kind of going from this thing of, like slavery being built on capitalism, things like that, all the way till now. It is a failing system. But you were saying earlier, Jack, about the differences between this era versus past eras. So, I mean, I don't know if something is mostly good at the expense of, like I said, back to when we first started, or when we start calling this land America. If people are suffering, they're not able to pay bills, et cetera, the whole thing. Overall, and yeah, to Jack's point, when you're seeing just one or two people, Bezos, I think, comes to mind, Musk comes to mind, where these workers aren't getting anywhere near what they could, something that they could afford to do, right? But they don't. So I don't know. I would say if things aren't good in general for most people, then they're not good overall. That's kind of my
What I
take on it.
what I would respond to, slavery being a key element of building up the United States of America in the 1700s and the 1800s, most prominently, is yes, that is a form of capitalism at one time in our history. And then let's go to the government stepping in to course correct, affirmative action, you know, doing it as much as it can to try and pull people out of the ditches that they were forced to start off in. Is it perfect? No. But the way I think of it is like everybody is reaching for a bunch of apples in a tree. And certain groups, when they have officially have received their freedom in the United States, have already started off in ditches. They have started off at a disadvantage compared to certain people. Here comes the government coming in just to step in and to put dirt back into that ditch so that people start off on the level playing field. Is that the government coming in and seizing property and taking away the idea of the personal individual buying, or owning the means of production? No, it's not. But it's the government stepping in to course correct and make sure that there's competition, equal competition among the people. So that I am a strong believer in what FDR talked about. When people are falling, the government is here to catch you. The government is not here to take your property. The government is just here to make sure that you are not going to be left behind, essentially.
Yeah, and then so along those lines, Leila, again, I think Jack and I are on the same page as to what socialism means. Socialism is like when the government, to me, when the government owns the means of production. And so to be in favor of a socialist economic system, to me, means that what happens is the government takes over businesses, takes over private property. Like, so the government would own Amazon, the government would own, um, would just pick whatever it happens to be. And what my friends seem to think was that that's what people who are in favor of socialism are talking about, is government ownership of the means of production. That factories would be owned by the government, Amazon would be owned by the government, grocery stores would be owned and run by the government. Is that what you favor? You, no, Leila.
Um, to, I guess to degree. Listen, I'm still working that out, right? Like in my head, but I do think,
That is
that's
a
like,
totally fair answer, by the
yeah,
way.
like I am, but I do. I have an issue with one person mostly owning that. I think there's an issue with uh Bezos being one of the, I'm sorry, now the second richest man in the world, and having these people, the way Amazon runs, and how workers are treated, and they're not even paid for the work. Like there was this guy, I can't remember, some doofus. He was like a business owner, maybe in Europe, and he was going on about how for his company, the workers, we don't need you. We don't need you. So it's basically like you're lucky to have a job. I don't know if you guys know who I'm talking about. Like I said, he was, I think, of some business in Europe or Canada or some shit. But, and that was his idea. And it was along he was also, super capitalist, a billionaire. And that's the thing that I had issues with. So I don't know who I would say should own Amazon, but kind of like you were saying, Jack, like I don't necessarily mind that I think to be a billionaire, Phil, like you and I had said, you had to have fucked someone over, full stop. But, is there a way to do it? Do I believe that the whole no ethical billionaires as of right now? Yeah, totally. But yeah, it's not so much someone being rich, it's the fact that you're hoarding all that shit. When you have workers who can't afford shit, and they're, I'm sure you guys all order from Amazon too. So, and they're treated the way they're treated. They're not allowed to do breaks, etc., etc.,
I got my
etc.
book
And other,
regime change from Amazon.
yeah,
Just to be ironic, by the way.
yeah, right, right. So in that sense, like I said, I'm still working it out, but I do think that there's a problem with one person owning it, and most of like I get people, like I've told you about this, Bill, like my cousins on my mom's side who are in their 70s, and one of them, he's like, when I was, this age, I was doing this, this, and this. Yeah, but rent and shit is not the same fucking prices, and it's certain things have stagnated from before when you were doing it, and that's an issue, you know what I mean? So,
So say,
okay.
then, if I can, Leila, it sounds to me like when you're talking about socialism or its virtues, what you're primarily concerned about is income inequality, like that the fabulously wealthy have too much, and so many people don't have enough.
Yes, that's a huge focus for me, if not like maybe not necessarily the sole one, but yeah,
Right.
hugely so.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
Noah, since you've been sort of listening, if you don't have any thoughts on this, if this is not something you thought about, but I figured since you're sitting here listening to it, do you have any thoughts on this? Have you heard your parents talk about this?
Mm, I think my parents usually do. My parents do usually talk about this. What I think is like, I really don't have any thoughts, honestly,
Okay. I mean,
because
it's a
honestly, I
complicated
guess I've been
topic.
agreeing with what you guys have been saying.
Okay. And then maybe at the end of the semester, I'll revisit
Yeah,
it
it
and say, like,
is.
yeah,
It
okay. And Jack's raising his hand like we're in class, as if Jack raised his hand when he was actually in class. He just wanted
Did
to shout stuff
I?
out.
I did raise my hand in your class.
Actually, that's fair. That's true.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So what I would say is about the idea of some people out there believing that the Bernie Sanders and the AOCs of this world, that they believe the government wants to own everything, essentially, wants to be in control of everything. False. False. Okay. Can you make that argument about the idea of Medicare for all? Maybe. Okay. We have seen it work in other Western countries. I will say that, you know, um, you can maybe make an argument about the government owning the means of production in that sense. But when we're talking about the grocery stores in New York City that Mamdani's opening up, is he coming in and buying all of the grocery stores in New York City? No, he's not. Is the government owning that grocery store in Brooklyn? Absolutely. But what is that doing? It is putting a public competitor into the market that will have cheaper prices so that it forces competition and requires other private grocery stores, privately owned grocery stores, to have to lower their prices to which will help working people who are paying $5,000 a month in rent in New York City right now, you know, who need just a little step to help them a little bit. When I talk about the healthcare public option, yes, if we were to make Medicare a public competitor in the market, yes, the federal government would own that. But it's not buying United. It's not buying Kaiser, you know. It's just a public competitor in the market that will stabilize prices. We have it here in Los Angeles. We have LADWP, Department of Water and Power, owned by the city of Los Angeles. You know, we have the LAPD here in the city of Los Angeles, owned by the government, owned by the city of Los Angeles. You know, Rick Caruso. I mean, there's private police forces out there. I just brought up Rick Caruso because I thought of the private fire department that he brought in during the Palisades fires. LAFD. You know, are we talking county? Are we talking city? Owned by the government. You know, that is. I think that is where who you would call the democratic socialists are at for the most part. Other than Medicare for all, that is the one thing I would probably say they would come in and that would be a sweeping change to, you know, the healthcare system in this country. But
But the idea of eradicating capitalism, because you're talking about the grocery stores, I'm thinking about like my own plumbing business, right?
yeah,
I'm thinking of my friend who used to own a video store business, right?
yeah,
Before videos became like relics of the past. I'm talking about
they're coming
nail
back.
salons,
They're coming back.
supercuts, Subway sandwiches, Jack in the Box. The
Yeah.
idea that these people who call themselves democratic socialists want the government to take over all that strikes me as being absurd. But he had asked me, talk to some people you know on the left, and I think you'll be surprised at what they want to hear. So I figured, here, I have two people on the left. I'll see what he has to say. So hold on, I'm going to stop the recording.